It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
All right, this next question is from Nick Stevens. Nick says, if your Roth 401k has no fees, but your Roth IRA has a 5.75% transaction fee and $10 yearly fee, would you still take match and max out Roth or put it all in the Roth 401k? So I'm going to start on this one. If your Roth IRA has a 5.75% transaction fee and a $10 yearly fee, you should change where you house your Roth IRA. You should go look.
I have a clue where that Roth IRA is, by the way.
I would go look somewhere.
When I hear 5.75%, I know exactly the A-share class you're buying.
I would think about going.
There's probably 4 funds that they got you invested in, but I'll stop there.
I would go look at a Vanguard, a Fidelity, a Charles Schwab, a Philip, like a low-cost custodian, because you do not have to pay 5.75% on your Roth IRA. You do not have to pay an annual fee on your Roth IRA. There are free solutions for you out there, and you get to choose where your Roth IRA is housed. So step number one, I'd stop doing that because that just does not make a lot of sense for what you're doing. Well, then the question becomes, if I have access to a Roth 401k or an access to a Roth IRA, should I just put everything in the 401k, or should I get up to the employer match in the 401k and then double back to the Roth IRA?
That's a great question. And my brain was going in a bunch of different directions when I'm thinking about, because here's the ideal, and I'm going to, before you start sending me the troll comments, I get it. Remember, we're financial mutants. We're for the 20%, not the 100%. Mm-hmm. So when I give advice like this, I know this is not everybody, because this was not even Brian Preston when I was 26, 28 years old, is that the goal is I'd love for you to be able to do both. Mm-hmm. I'd love for you to be able to max out the Roth IRA, the Roth 401k if your income was below the thresholds. But I think for a younger person, that you're not at the level where if you're trying to get to your 20 to 25% gross income savings for the future retirement. And I'd love to get your take too, Bo. Is I'm okay if you do, especially in this situation where you have a Roth IRA and then a very low cost, because maybe you have an employer that has a very low cost plan with Vanguard or Fidelity. I'm okay with loading up the Roth 401k. Because, look, there's also some ERISA protection. Sure. There's some good things, but I think it becomes more of a line in the sand moment when you get higher in income and you have the ability to actually do both. And now you have to also think about, well, which tax bracket am I in? And kind of do a backdoor conversion strategy. It gets a lot more sophisticated and complicated at that point, and that's where the financial order of operations will hopefully clarify it.
I think it's really close. My advice would be, I'm going to start with my Roth 401k. I'm going to go get the maximum employer match. And then, because I'm using a low-cost provider, like a Fidelity, like a Vanguard, like a Charles Schwab, I'm going to go max out my Roth IRA up to the $6,000 or $7,000 a year. And then, once I've done that, I'm going to go back to my Roth 401k. Yeah. The only reason I'm doing that cutout for the Roth IRA is really for one main benefit. Inside of a Roth IRA, you can always get to the money that you put into it.
Good point.
Without having to pay taxes or penalties. Now, you never want to do that. That's like break glass in case of emergency, but you can get to your basis. Well, if it's held in an outside IRA, it's much easier to get to that. Your 401k may be structured where if you're still working, if you're still an active participant, you actually can't go get to those dollars unless the plan allows for in-service withdrawals or that sort of thing. So in my opinion, the Roth IRA provides just a slight bit of additional flexibility outside of the 401k. So I would do 401k to match, then I would go to Roth, and then I would go back to maxing out the Roth 401k.
This is a unique case, the way this was presented, in the fact that low-cost 401k option, high-cost Roth IRA. That's unusual. That's by the fact unusual. Because, especially if you're watching the Money Guy show, you know that is optional to have the high-cost Roth. Whereas a lot of times with the employer plan, your 401k, you, the employee, don't have control over that. And it's not uncommon that we have a lot of 401ks that are expensive, that might have that 5.75% commission built in or higher operating expenses, whereas you can personally go choose a Roth IRA with the low-cost providers like Fidelity Investments or Vanguard and keep those costs low. So I think you're spot on, Bo. And that, well done on the essentially closeted emergency reserves fund.
Last reserve.
That is one of those things. I don't want you to ever break that glass, but when you get desperate, you get in a bad situation like we had in 2020 where maybe you lost your job and you have all these things going on, you want to have
You gotta do
access.
what you got to do. Yep.